The fever had me pinned to the old leather sofa like a butterfly's under glass. 101.2 degrees Fahrenheit, the thermometer said. Same as yesterday, same as the day Grandpa took his last breath. The house was quiet, except for the wind rattling the 120-year-old windows and the low hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen. Central Oregon winter light poured through the pines, pale and unforgiving. Then the front door exploded inward. Not knocked, not opened, exploded. The heavy oak slammed against the wall hard enough to knock Grandpa's 1948 branding iron off its hook. Cold air rushed in, carrying the smell of diesel and entitlement. Rick stormed in first, cheeks red from more than the wind, wearing that same camel hair coat he'd been leasing for 6 years. Behind him, Cheryl clutched a manila folder like it was the deed to heaven. And Maddie, pink puffer jacket, ring light already clipped to her phone, was live streaming, because of course she was. 2 guys from Central Oregon Demolition followed them in, high-vis vests and confused faces. One carried a clipboard, the other a metal measuring wheel. They stopped just inside the threshold, suddenly unsure whose side of the law they were on. Rick didn't waste time. "Pack your shit, Harper," he barked, voice echoing off the log walls Grandpa had hewn himself. "We filed the quitclaim this morning at Deschutes County. This eyesore is getting bulldozed next week. 40 view lots, 6-figure each. Time to move on." Cheryl waved the folder like a victory flag. "It's all legal, honey. You signed it. You were emotional. You don't remember." Maddie spun in a slow circle, filming the Riverstone fireplace, the elk antlers above the mantel, the faded family photos. 42,000 people watching live. "New chapter, babes," she sang to the camera. "From creepy old cattle ranch to Maddie's dream estate. We're talking infinity pool, content barn, outdoor ring light pergola, manifesting it right now." The demolition guys shifted their weight. One glanced at me, then quickly away. They could smell the crazy. I pushed myself up on one elbow. The room tilted, then settled. My throat felt like sandpaper, but I managed to croak the only sentence I needed. "You sure you checked who actually owns the dirt you're standing on?" The smirk came all by itself, small, tired, but sharp enough to cut glass. Silence dropped like a guillotine. Rick's mouth opened, closed. Cheryl's manicured fingers tightened on the folder. Maddie's ring light flickered as her hand faltered. I let the quiet stretch just long enough for the fever sweat to cool on my skin. Then I lay back down, pulled Grandpa's old Hudson's blanket up to my chin, and closed my eyes. Tick-tock, assholes, 48 hours. 10 days earlier, the sky over Sisters, Oregon, was the color of a fresh bruise. A cold front had rolled down from the Cascades, and the wind cut straight through the black coats at the little Catholic cemetery behind St. Edward's. Only 11 people stood around the open grave. Me, Harper, Daniel Brennan, Grandpa Paddy's lawyer, and the only man still alive who'd served with him in K-Sen. 4 old ranch hands who'd known Paddy since Eisenhower, the priest, half frozen, and 3 neighbors who actually gave a damn. That was it. Rick, Cheryl, and Maddie arrived 43 minutes late in Rick's leased white Range Rover, tires spitting gravel like they were pulling up to a red carpet premiere. Cheryl stepped out first in a charcoal cape and oversized sunglasses, indoors weather, apparently. Maddie wore a black bodycon dress, thigh-high boots, and a tiny velvet beret tilted for maximum Instagram morning aesthetic. Rick had on a Tom Ford suit and the expression of a man who'd already calculated the resale value of the headstone. Maddie angled her phone for a boomerang of the casket lowering, captioned, "Honoring legacy while manifesting new beginnings, #ranch vibes, #grandpa in heaven." 38,000 likes in 6 minutes. I didn't cry. I'd done all my crying in the oncology ward at St. Charles, holding Paddy's hand while the morphine dripped and he whispered stories about riding fence lines in 1949 with nothing but a .22 and a dog named Whiskey. The priest finished. The ranch hands tossed handfuls of high desert dirt onto the pine box. Rick checked his Rolex, impatient. Then we all drove 20 miles east to Bend, to the low-slung brick building on N.W. Greenwood where Daniel Brennan had his office. Smelt like coffee, old paper, and the pine saw Mrs. Alvarez had used for 30 years. Inside the conference room, the thermostat was set to retiree hot. Brennan, 70 going on 90, adjusted his Vietnam service ball cap and opened a manila folder thick as a phone book. Patrick Mary O'Connor was of sound mind when he signed this on March 12th of last year, he began, voice gravelly from 50 years of lucky strikes he never actually quit. I'm gonna make this simple so nobody wastes my afternoon. He slid the last will and testament across the table. 1 page of assets, 1 page of bequests. Everything. The 250 acres deeded in 1938, the 1898 log ranch house, the water rights, the hay barn, the cattle brand still registered with the state, the Edward Jones account with 7 figures Paddy never bragged about, went to me. Harper Siobhan O'Connor, sole heir. No trusts listed on this page because the real armor was filed somewhere else. Everything else, personal effects, guns, tools, the 1947 Ford pickup, to be divided as my granddaughter sees fit. Rick made a sound like a man who'd been kicked in the sternum by a mule. Cheryl's hand flew to her pearls so hard she snapped the strand. Tiny beads bounced across the table like hail. Maddie actually stopped filming for 3 full seconds. Brennan kept reading, calm as winter steel. To my son Richard and his wife Cheryl, I leave my love, my forgiveness, and the hope they finally learn the difference between earning and taking. To my granddaughter Madison, the same, plus a gentle reminder that pretty pictures don't pay property taxes. You could have heard a gavel drop in Portland. Rick stood so fast his chair rolled back and hit the wall. His face had gone the color of raw steak. Cheryl clutched his arm, nails digging in like she was afraid he'd explode right there. Maddie's mouth hung open. For once, the ring light couldn't save her. Not one word, not a scream, not a sob, not a "this is bullshit." Just 3 pairs of eyes doing the math, making the plan, sealing the silent pact right in front of me. Rick's jaw worked soundlessly. Cheryl's lips pressed into a bloodless line. Maddie finally remembered to hit stop on her live. Daniel Brennan closed the folder with a soft, final thump. Harper, the keys to the house and the combination to the gun safe are already in your name. Everything else transfers immediately. Rick, Cheryl, Maddie, you're welcome to take a box of photos or a coffee mug if Harper says it's okay. Otherwise, meeting adjourned. Rick looked at me across that table like I'd personally stolen his oxygen. I looked back, dry-eyed, still smelling the cemetery dirt on my boots. He leaned forward, voice low enough only I could hear. This isn't over, kid. I gave him the smallest nod. No, Dad, it's only just begun. 72 hours after the funeral, while I was still burning through tissues and chicken soup at the ranch, my family was already selling the place out from under me. Redmond, Oregon, 3:17 p.m. Rick's leased Range Rover rolled into the parking lot of High Desert Land Partners, a glass and timber office that screamed new money. Inside, a shark in Patagonia vest and $800 sneakers waited. Travis McAllister, the developer who turned half the alfalfa fields between Bend and Redmond into view estates with names like Tetherow Ridge and Obsidian Sky. Travis had the preliminary plat maps spread across the table like a treasure chart. 40 half-acre lots carved out of our 250 acres, each with a red circle showing where the future McMansions would sit to maximize the Three Sisters views. List price, $1.2 to $1.8 million each. Total projected sellout, $42 million gross. Rick didn't even sit down before he started talking numbers. $2 million non-refundable earnest money wired today, Travis said, sliding the purchase and sale agreement across the table. We close 30 days after you deliver clean, marketable title.
That means Harper signs the quitclaim, or you figure out how to make her disappear from the chain. Cheryl's manicure clicked against her Yeti tumbler. "She'll sign," she said, voice sweet as antifreeze. "She's grieving, overwhelmed. She'll do whatever's best for the family." Rick gave a short, ugly laugh. "Or we help her remember she already did." Travis didn't ask questions. In Central Oregon, family drama is just another closing condition. Upstairs, in the loft that smelled like cedar and ambition, Maddie was on FaceTime with her manager in L.A. "I need the ranch by March 20th, she hissed, pacing in front of a mood board covered with Polaroids of cowboy hats, vintage turquoise, and sunset silhouettes. "Coachella's April 11th. If I drop I bought a 120-year-old cattle ranch and turned it into a content compound, I hit 2 million followers overnight."
Brands are already asking for rates. Her manager promised sponsored hay bales and glamping yurts. All Maddie needed was the backdrop and the title. Back downstairs, Rick signed the addendum that locked in the $2 million deposit. Travis slid the check across the table, made out to Cascade Vista Holdings, LLC, the same dormant company Rick had used for his failed glamping startup in 2019. 48 hours, Travis said, standing. "Get me the recorded deed with Harper's signature, and we break ground the following Monday. I've got excavators on standby." Cheryl smiled for the first time in days. Real smile, the kind that showed teeth. "Consider it done." On the drive back to Bend, Rick rehearsed the script in his head. Harper's sick. Harper's confused. Harper wants what's best for the family. Harper already signed. She just doesn't remember because of the grief and the fever. They'd scanned her signature from last year's Christmas card, "Love you forever, Harper," and practiced tracing it until it looked natural. Troy Nguyen, the mobile notary who'd rubber stamp anything for $500 cash and a Starbucks gift card, was already on speed dial. Maddie spent the ride editing a teaser reel. Slow-motion footage of the ranch at golden hour. Overlay text flashing, "Big things coming. Who wants a tour of my future home?" 280,000 likes in 4 hours. By the time their tires hit the gravel road to the ranch 2 days later, the plan was locked, loaded, and legally radioactive. They just forgot one tiny detail. Grandpa Paddy had drilled into me since I was 6 years old. Never trust a man who measures land in dollars instead of heartbeats. It was a bluebird April morning in 2023. The kind where the Cascades still wear snow, but the meadowlarks are drunk on spring. Paddy sat propped up in his hospital bed at St. Charles in Bend, oxygen hissing, skin the color of old parchment, but eyes sharp as ever. I was 27 then, living in the bunkhouse so I could be 10 steps from his room at 3 a.m. when the pain meds wore off. He motioned me closer with one bony finger. "Darling, we're fixin' to do something today that'll make your daddy madder than a wet hen in a wool sack." That got my attention. He slid a thin folder from under his pillow. Inside were 3 documents, already signed, in his spidery but unmistakable hand. 1. A grant deed transferring the entire 250.38 acres, the ranch house, the water rights, the mineral rights, everything, out of Patrick M. O'Connor, an unmarried man, and into the freshly created O'Connor Family Protection Trust, irrevocable, dated April 9th, 2023. 2. Trust certification naming Brennan and Associates, LLC, as sole trustee. 3. Schedule A, listing me, Harper Siobhan O'Connor, as the sole present beneficiary and successor trustee only upon my 40th birthday or Paddy's death, whichever came first. Translation in plain cowboy: the land no longer belonged to Paddy. It damn sure didn't belong to me on paper. It belonged to a bulletproof, irrevocable trust controlled by Daniel Brennan, a man who'd once carried Paddy 3 miles through a rice paddy under fire and owed him his life twice over. Paddy tapped the page with a finger that still wore the scar from a barbed wire fence in 1957. Your daddy thinks he's smart. He thinks when I'm gone, this place drops straight into your name like an apple off a tree, and all he's got to do is shake you till you sign it over. But an irrevocable trust, Harper. Once this deed hits the Deschutes County clerk, ain't no court in Oregon, ain't no forged signature, ain't no sob story that can claw it back. Not in 100 years. I stared at the papers, heart hammering. Grandpa, that's nuclear. They're going to lose their minds. Let 'em lose 'em, he rasped, then coughed a laugh that turned into a wheeze. I built this place with my own hands after the war. Logged the timber, poured the foundation, drilled the well when the bank said no. Your daddy never lifted a hammer here unless it was to hang a for sale sign. This land's got my blood in the soil and your mama's laughter in the wind. Ain't for sale, not ever. He made me read every paragraph out loud. Then he took my hand, cold but strong. They'll come with papers, darling. Pretty papers, lawyer papers. Papers that say you signed when you were confused or generous or wanted to keep peace in the family. Let them come. Let them file. Let them hang themselves with their own rope. Because the second they record a deed with your name supposedly signed, they'll have just committed felony forgery, trying to steal something you never even owned. His eyes glittered with pure Irish mischief. Best part? The county recorder's office stamps the date and time on everything. And Daniel's gonna make sure the trust deed was recorded 9 months ago. So when they wave their fake paper in your face, you just smile and ask whose name is on the tax bill this year. I laughed through tears. You're evil. No, sweetheart, he whispered, squeezing my fingers. I'm Irish. We signed the final page in front of 2 nurses and a notary who drove up from Lapine. I watched the grant deed get scanned, uploaded, and recorded at 2:47 p.m. that afternoon. Public record, permanent, unbreakable. Paddy leaned back against the pillow, exhausted but triumphant. One more thing, he said, voice barely audible now. When they come storming here acting like they've won, you don't argue, you don't cry. You give 'em the same look I gave that VC officer in '68 right before I called in the artillery on his own position. He winked. Let them hang themselves. That was the last full conversation we ever had. 3 weeks later, he slipped away while I held his hand and the meadowlarks sang outside the window. But the trap was already sprung. The rope was already knotted. All that was left was for Rick, Cheryl, and Maddie to step into the noose and kick the chair out from under themselves. 9 months later, fever burning through my body on that leather sofa, I remembered every word. They were coming with papers, and I was ready to watch them hang. The fever had peaked at 101.8 degrees. I was floating somewhere between sleep and delirium when the front door took its second beating in 48 hours. This time it opened normally, but the energy that poured in was worse than any kick. Rick marched straight to the coffee table, slapped a manila folder down so hard the 1898 branding iron on the wall rattled again, and flipped it open like a winning poker hand. Quitclaim deed, recorded this morning at Deschutes County, 9:12 a.m., he announced, voice booming off the log walls. Your signature, Harper. Notarized. Filed. Done. This ranch now belongs to Madison Rose O'Connor. You have exactly 48 hours to get your ass off my daughter's property. Cheryl stood behind him in a cream cashmere coat, arms crossed, lips pressed into that satisfied hyphen she used when she thought she'd finally won. Maddie was already live on Instagram, phone held high, ring light clipped, 62,000 people watching. Povey, clearing out the old to make room for the new, she narrated in her influencer whisper. Don't worry, the vibes will be immaculate. I pushed myself upright on the sofa. The room tilted, then righted. Grandpa's Hudson's Bay blanket slid to the floor. My voice came out like gravel soaked in honey. Hand it over. Rick smirked and slid the top page across the table. Standard Oregon quitclaim deed form. Grantor, Harper Siobhan O'Connor. Grantee, Madison Rose O'Connor. Consideration, love and affection. Legal description, the entire 250.38 acres. Parcel number R44320. My signature at the bottom, perfect loops, the little heart dot over the I I've used since 8th grade. Except I hadn't written it. They'd lifted it straight from the birthday card I gave Grandpa last year. Love you forever, Harper. And cleaned it up in Photoshop. Even the pen pressure looked almost right. Below my forged signature, acknowledged before Troy Newen, Notary Public for Oregon, commission number 221947, expires 06/30/2027. His raised seal and illegible scrawl took up half the page. I flipped to the recording page. Red Deschutes County stamp, 9/12:03 a.m., instrument number 2024-004127, paid $91 recording fee. Rick folded his arms. Troy came highly recommended, very discreet. Cheryl added, soft and poisonous, you were upset yesterday, honey. Fever, grief, all those painkillers the doctor gave you. You asked us to handle everything. We have texts. Maddie zoomed in on my face for the drama. Chat says you look shook, bestie. I let the silence stretch just long enough for the grandfather clock to tick 8 times. Then I looked up, met Rick's eyes, and smiled the smallest, sickest smile I could manage. 48 hours, I repeated, voice barely above a whisper. Got it. Rick blinked. He'd expected screaming, tears, bargaining, not acceptance. Cheryl's victory smile faltered. That's right, 48 hours. Movers come Monday morning. Anything left on the property becomes Maddie's. Maddie spun, filming the Riverstone fireplace. This is going to be my real backdrop, you guys. Natural light in here is insane. Rick leaned in, lowering his voice so the phone wouldn't catch it. We're being generous, Harper. $25,000 cash, wired today if you leave quietly. Otherwise, the sheriff escorts you out. Your choice. I pulled the blanket back up to my chin, closed my eyes, and let my head sink into the pillow. See you Monday, I murmured. They stood there another 10 seconds, waiting for the breakdown that never came. When it didn't, Rick gave a curt nod, turned on his heel, and the 3 of them filed out. The front door shut with the soft, final click of people who believed they'd already won. I waited until the sound of the Range Rover faded down the gravel road. Then I reached for my phone, pulled up Daniel Brennan's contact, and hit call. He answered on the first ring. They just served me the forged quitclaim, I said, voice suddenly steady. Troy Nguyen, recorded 9:12 a.m. They're coming back Monday with movers and probably a sheriff they think they own. On the other end, Brennan let out a low, delighted chuckle that sounded like whiskey over ice. Good Lord, they're dumber than I gave them credit for. Sit tight, darling. Rest up. Drink fluids. Monday morning's gonna be biblical. I hung up, set the phone down, and stared at the forged deed still lying on the coffee table like a dead snake. 48 hours. Plenty of time. The call to Daniel Brennan lasted exactly 47 seconds. They just left, I said, voice still raspy from fever. Quitclaim deed, Troy Newen notary, recorded 9:12 this morning. 48 hours or the sheriff drags me out. Brennan's laugh came through the speaker like a shotgun full of gravel and joy. 3 felonies before coffee. Oregon forgery, filing false instrument, and conspiracy to commit theft of property over $1 million. Your daddy always did like efficiency. He paused just long enough to sip something that definitely wasn't tea. Let them come, Harper. Let them bring the whole damn circus. We'll be waiting with badges and body cams. Drink water. See you Monday. Click. I'd barely set the phone down when tires crunched gravel outside. Riley Parker, my best friend since Lewis and Clark College, kicked the door open with one boot, a bucket of Ezel's fried chicken in one hand and a MacBook under the other arm like a rifle. "Tell me they did something stupid," she said, dropping the food on the table and flipping the laptop open. "I brought provisions and felony receipts." Riley is a senior litigation paralegal at one of the biggest firms in Portland. She eats discovery disputes for breakfast. I handed her the forged quitclaim. She read it in 4 seconds, eyes narrowing to slits. Troy Newen, of course.
This guy's been on the Secretary of State's watch list since 2022. She was already pulling up the Deschutes County Public Records portal. Let's see how sloppy they really are. 2 clicks later, the recorded deed popped up. Instrument number 2024-004127, filed electronically at 9:12:03 a.m. by user account registered to Cascade Vista Holdings, LLC. Riley whistled low. Cascade Vista? That's your dad's old glamping LLC from the 2019 bankruptcy. He literally used a dead company with his own name on the Articles of Incorporation. This is weapons-grade stupid. Then she zoomed in on the notary block and laughed so hard she had to wipe her eyes. Hold on. 9:12 a.m.? She spun the laptop toward me. "You told me you had a telehealth appointment yesterday morning because the fever spiked to 102.6 degrees. I nodded, already pulling up the Providence patient portal on my phone.
There it was, FaceTime visit with Dr. Priya Patel, internal medicine, February 21, 2024, 9:05 a.m. to 9:28 a.m. Video recording saved to chart for quality assurance. Timestamp. Metadata. My flushed, sweaty face on camera the entire time Troy Newen supposedly watched me sign away $1 million ranch. Riley high-fived me so hard my shoulder hurt. "Congratulations, babe. You have an ironclad, time-stamped, HIPAA-protected alibi. Troy just notarized a felony, and your dad just paid him to do it." She tore into the chicken like a victory feast. "We're not just going to beat them, Harper. We're going to embarrass them on a level that gets its own Wikipedia page." We spent the next 3 hours building the kill folder on the dining table that Paddy built in 1953. Printout of the forged deed, screenshot of the 9:12 a.m.,
filing by Cascade Vista Holdings, PDF of my Providence visit summary with video timestamp, LLC search showing Rick as the registered agent, Troy Newen's notary commission history, 2 prior complaints, text messages from Cheryl, "Honey, just sign and we'll take care of everything, love." By midnight, the table looked like a war room. Riley finally closed the laptop and looked me dead in the eye. Monday morning, they're walking into a felony ambush on property that isn't even in your name to give away. You ready? I took a long pull from the Gatorade she'd forced on me. "Grandpa said let them hang themselves," I answered. "I'm just handing them the rope." Riley grinned like a wolf. "Then let's make sure the knot is pretty." Sunday, 4:47 p.m. The fever had finally broken, leaving me shaky but clear-headed for the first time in days. Riley was asleep on the couch, chicken box empty, laptop glowing with county records. My phone buzzed on the coffee table like an angry hornet. Unknown number. Central Oregon area code. I knew exactly who it was. I hit speaker and let it ring twice more, just to make him sweat. "Harper?" Rick's voice came through syrupy, the fake warmth he used on investors right before the check bounced. "Glad you're feeling better, kiddo. Let's end this clean." I said nothing. He cleared his throat. $25,000, wire tonight. Clean money. You take it, you walk away, you sign a simple non-disclosure, and nobody has to get embarrassed. We're family. I don't want this on the news. Riley's eyes snapped open. She mouthed, "Record." I was already recording. $25,000, I repeated, tasting the words, for a ranch worth north of $15 million improved value. Generous. Rick chuckled, the sound of a man who thought he still held all the cards. Come on, you're a landscaper. You don't want the taxes, the upkeep, the headaches. Maddie's got plans, big plans, Coachella content, brand deals. You'd be helping your sister. I leaned back against the sofa, closed my eyes, and let the silence stretch until it was uncomfortable. Tell me something, Dad, I said finally, soft as snowfall. When Troy Nguyen stamped that quitclaim yesterday morning at 9:12, was he in the room with me, or was I on a recorded FaceTime with Dr. Priya Patel at Providence, Fever 102.6, asking for more Tamiflu? Dead air. I could actually hear his breathing change. Funny thing about Providence, I continued, conversational. They save the video visits for quality assurance. Time-stamped, cloud storage, HIPAA protected. I watched it again this afternoon. My face is right there on camera from 9:05 to 9:28. Tell Troy I said hi. Hope he likes federal prison food. The line exploded. You lying little bitch, Rick roared, all pretense gone. I have the deed. I have the recording stamp. This property is legally Maddie's, and tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock sharp, I'm rolling in with 2 excavators, a demolition crew, and a sheriff's deputy who owes me favors. You will be off my daughter's land, or you will be removed in handcuffs. Do you hear me? Handcuffs? Riley was already grinning like Christmas morning. I let him scream for another 10 seconds, then cut in, calm as high desert ice. Bring the sheriff, Dad, please, save us the phone call. And tell the excavator guys to invoice you up front. Last time you hired heavy equipment, the check bounced so hard, the bank called the DA. You think you're smart? He snarled. You think one doctor video changes anything? I've got lawyers, Harper. I will bury you in litigation until you're living in a cardboard box under the Colorado Avenue Bridge. Lawyers cost money, I said sweetly. How's the Range Rover lease payment this month? Still current? Silence again, heavier this time. I dropped my voice to the same register Grandpa used when he was done arguing with a stubborn bull. 8 o'clock tomorrow. I'll leave the gate open. I ended the call. Riley let out a low whistle. Jesus, he just threatened you on a recorded line with felony eviction based on a forged deed. That's what, 4 new charges? 5, I said, setting the phone down. He also admitted intent to use a sheriff's deputy for an illegal eviction. That's abuse of process. She raised her Gatorade in a mock toast. To Rick O'Connor, the gift that keeps on incriminating. I stared at the dark screen, heart hammering, but not from fear anymore, from anticipation. 8 o'clock. The rope was around their necks now. All that was left was the drop. Sunday night, 11:47 p.m. The house was quiet except for the wind worrying the old cedar shingles and the low hum of the refrigerator. Riley and I had dragged every lamp in the place to the 200-year-old Ponderosa dining table that Paddy's grandfather had built from a single tree. It now looked like a federal evidence locker. Center stage, the black 3-ring binder Daniel Brennan had dropped off an hour ago. Inside, certified copy of the April 9, 2023 grant deed into the O'Connor Family Protection Trust, recorded at 2:47 p.m. Trust certification showing Brennan and Associates, LLC, as sole trustee. Schedule of assets, 250.38 acres, water rights, house, everything. Affidavit from Dr. Priya Patel with attached Providence video stills, me, red-eyed, fever-flushed, 9:12 a.m. timestamp glowing in the corner. Printout of the forged quitclaim, instrument number 2024-004127, filed by Cascade Vista Holdings, LLC, Rick's name on the 2019 Articles of Organization circled in red Sharpie, Troy Nguyen's notary commission history, 2 prior suspensions, screenshots of Cheryl's "Just Sign Honey" texts, audio file of Rick's meltdown this afternoon, transcribed and timestamped. Riley clipped 2 GoPro Hero 12s to the elk antler chandelier, lenses aimed at the front door and the living room archway. Wide angle, 4K, cloud backup every 30 seconds. She tested the red recording lights. Smile, future defendants, you're on candid camera. Brennan had stayed just long enough to lay one more document on the pile. A courtesy heads-up he'd already faxed to the Deschutes County District Attorney at 9:03 p.m. Subject line, felony, forgery, and attempted theft, O'Connor Ranch, probable cause packet to follow tomorrow, 800. He'd patted my shoulder on his way out. Ramirez is parked at the old hay barn a mile down the road. Lights off, coffee hot, body cam charged. Minute I text him showtime, he rolls. Riley poured us the last of the coffee, black as midnight. "You nervous?" she asked. "Terrified," I admitted, but the good kind, like the second before the gate opens at a rodeo. She clinked her mug against mine. "Tomorrow, we don't fight. We just open the door and let the law do the rest." I looked around the room. The Riverstone fireplace Paddy had laid in 1952. The branding irons on the wall. The family photos where Rick and Cheryl were conspicuously absent from the later ones. Outside, the temperature had dropped into the teens. Frost glittered on the grass like broken glass. I killed the lamps one by one until only the fire and the red GoPro lights remained. Somewhere down the county road, Sheriff Ramirez waited in the dark. Somewhere in Bend, Rick, Cheryl, and Maddie were probably toasting their victory with expensive champagne they couldn't afford. I pulled Grandpa's old wool coat off the hook, slipped it on, and stood on the porch for a long minute, breathing high desert air sharp enough to cut. 8 hours. The trap was set, the bait taken, the rope taut. All that was left was the fall. I went back inside, locked the door, and for the first time in weeks slept without dreaming. Monday, 8 a.m. sharp. The convoy rolled up the frost-crusted gravel like a bad country song. Rick's white Range Rover first, Cheryl's Pearl Escalade behind it, then 2 flatbed pickups hauling a bright yellow Caterpillar 320 excavator that looked obscene against the snow-capped Cascades. 6 guys in Carhartt and steel-toe boots climbed out, breath fogging, already counting overtime. Maddie hopped down from the Escalade in a cream shearling coat and knee-high white boots, ring light already clipped to her phone. "Morning, ranch besties," she chirked to 41,000 live viewers. "Demolition Day is finally here. We're clearing the old to manifest the new. Drop a howdy if you're excited." Rick strode ahead, chest puffed, keys jingling like he'd owned the place since birth. Cheryl followed, designer sunglasses hiding last night's champagne headache. The excavator operator revved the diesel just for effect. They didn't knock. Rick turned the knob, my knob, and pushed the door wide. I was standing dead center of the living room, boots planted on the 1898 Navajo rug Paddy had traded 3 steers for. Arms folded, smiling. The smile threw them. Rick froze mid-step. "Why the hell are you still standing there? I told you." "Morning, Dad," I said, calm as creek water. "Beautiful day for a felony, isn't it?" Maddie kept filming, zooming in on my face. "Chat says you look insane right now, sis." Rick recovered, pulled the forged quitclaim from his coat like a winning lottery ticket. "This is recorded, Harper, legally binding. You're trespassing. Guys," he waved at the demolition crew, "start in the kitchen. Rip the cabinets first." The crew hesitated. Something in the air felt wrong. That's when Daniel Brennan stepped out from the dining room archway, tall as a judge, holding the black binder like it weighed 1,000 pounds. "Actually, Richard," he drawled, voice carrying to every corner, "the only thing recorded here is you committing 3 felonies on camera." Rick's face went the color of spoiled milk. Brennan opened the binder with deliberate calm and held up the certified grant deed dated April 9, 2023, gold Deschutes County seal gleaming. This ranch was transferred into the O'Connor Family Protection Trust 9 months ago, irrevocable. Trustee, my firm. Harper has 0 ownership interest to convey. 0. That means the quitclaim you filed Friday? He let the forged deed flutter to the rug like trash, worthless on its face. And the act of filing it? Felony forgery, felony filing of false instrument, and conspiracy to steal property valued at over $15 million. Cheryl made a strangled noise. Maddie's phone hand dropped an inch. Outside, tires crunched gravel again. 3 Deschutes County Sheriff's SUVs rolled up, lights flashing red and blue across the frost. Sheriff Javier Ramirez stepped out first, Stetson low, body cam glowing red. 3 deputies fanned behind him. Maddie's latte slipped from her manicured fingers and exploded across the pine floor in a caramel puddle. 52,000 people watching live. Oh my God, she whimpered, phone still recording. This isn't happening. Ramirez crossed the threshold like he owned the place, because legally the trust did. Morning, folks, he said, voice calm but loud enough for every microphone. Got a report of attempted theft by deception. Anybody want to tell me what's going on? Rick tried bluster first. This is a family matter, Javi. You know me. I know Patrick O'Connor, Ramirez cut in. Fished the notorious with him 40 years. He told me if his boy ever tried to sell this place, I was to treat it like someone robbing a church. So that's what I'm doing. He nodded to Brennan, who handed over the binder. Ramirez flipped through it once, nodded, then looked at Rick with something close to pity. Richard James O'Connor, Cheryl Lynn O'Connor, Madison Rose O'Connor. You are under arrest for forgery, filing false instrument, and conspiracy to commit theft. Cheryl let out a theatrical gasp and folded to the floor like a bad actress. One deputy knelt, checked her pulse, rolled his eyes. She's fine. Rick dropped to his knees on the Navajo rug, right in Maddie's spilled latte. Harper, please, I'm your father. We can fix this. I'm in debt, bad debt. Those developers already have $2 million of my money. I just needed a bridge. You needed a bridge you were willing to burn my future to build, I said. My voice didn't shake anymore. You don't get to steal Grandpa's legacy because your scams finally caught up with you. Maddie was openly sobbing now, mascara rivers down her cheeks, still live. Chat, this is a misunderstanding. Someone donate to my legal fund. A deputy gently took the phone, ended the stream. 57,000 viewers last seen. Rick lunged toward me, hands out. Harper, I'll lose everything. You already did, I said. Ramirez nodded to his deputies. Cuffs came out, cold and shiny. Rick's wrists first. Click, click. Cheryl next, still pretending to be unconscious until the steel touched skin. Maddie last, wailing as the deputy recited her rights like a bedtime story from hell. The excavator operator leaned in the doorway, scratching his head. Boss, we still demolishing, or? One of the deputies laughed. Son, the only thing getting demolished today is 3 egos. Ramirez tipped his hat to me. Miss O'Connor, you need anything else, you call. As they led my family out past the elk antlers and the Riverstone fireplace their great-grandfather had built, Rick looked back once. The man who used to tower over me looked small now, soaked in latte, wrists bound, future gone. I didn't look away. The last thing Maddie screamed before the cruiser door shut was, "This is going to ruin my brand." The excavator fired up in reverse, already leaving. Silence settled over the ranch like new snow. Riley appeared beside me, arms crossed, grinning like a coyote. #ranch revenge, she said, trending in 10 minutes guaranteed. I exhaled long and slow, and for the first time since Grandpa died, the house didn't feel too big. It felt exactly the right size. The fallout was faster and uglier than a high desert thunderstorm. Deschutes County District Attorney didn't even wait for the grand jury. The evidence packet Brennan handed over that Monday morning was so airtight, they filed felony indictments by Wednesday afternoon. Count 1, forgery in the first degree, ORS 165.013. Count 2, filing a false instrument, ORS 165.17. Count 3, criminal conspiracy to commit theft $1 million, ORS 161.450. Rick took the hardest hit. The judge, Honorable Sandra McAllister, who had known Paddy since 4-H days, called the crime a premeditated betrayal of blood and history. She sentenced him to 4 years Oregon Department of Corrections, no early release, plus $187,000 restitution to the trust for legal fees. Rick was processed at Coffee Creek the same week his Range Rover got repossessed in the Safeway parking lot. Cheryl tried the grieving wife coerced by abusive husband defense. The jury didn't buy it. Texts, emails, and her own signature on the developer addendum buried her. 18 months at Coffee Creek, concurrent with Rick's sentence, so they'd at least be in the same prison visiting day. Maddie got the lightest legal slap, 5 years supervised probation, 600 hours community service, and a permanent criminal record. But the court of public opinion executed her. The body cam clip of her screaming, "This is going to ruin my brand," while being cuffed in shearling and white boots, hit TikTok at 11:02 a.m. Monday. By Tuesday night, it had 28 million views, 1.4 million shares, and its own Wikipedia entry under Instant Karma compilations. Duets poured in, ranch kids in Carhartt, native creators in ribbon skirts, even a former Bachelor contestant stitching her crying face with captions like, "When the generational wealth you never earned gets repoed." Her follower count bled out overnight, 1.2 million, 800K, 400K, 180K, 40K by the end of the month. Every brand that had booked her for Coachella, Fashion Nova, White Fox, Pretty Little Thing canceled within 48 hours. One public apology video got ratioed 12-1 with laughing emojis. Her manager ghosted. The Maddie's Dream Ranch mood board got turned into merciless memes. Her face photoshopped onto wanted posters, eviction notices, prison jumpsuits. The hashtag #RanchRevenge trended #1 in the U.S. for 3 straight days. Barstool, Drama Alert, and even CNN ran segments titled "Influencer Family Tries to Forge Deed, Instantly Regrets It." Local news in Bend led with it for a week straight. Rick's old business contacts scattered like roaches when the lights came on. The $2 million deposit from Travis McAllister? Non-refundable, gone forever. Travis sued Rick personally. The judgment came back, asset search, 0. The condo in Tetherow went to foreclosure auction. The Tom Ford suits got sold on Facebook Marketplace for $40. Maddie tried a comeback 6 weeks later, tearful redemption arc video filmed in her friend's beige apartment in Boise. It got 11,000 views and 9,000 comments calling her latte felon. She ended up waitressing at a chain restaurant off the Parkway, wearing a name tag that said, "Hi, I'm Madison," while customers asked for selfies with the TikTok girl who got arrested. Cheryl's friends from the country club stopped inviting her to brunch. Someone started a Free Rick Facebook group with exactly 7 members, all bots. Rick's prison job assignment? Laundry, minimum wage 17 cents an hour. Meanwhile, the ranch stayed untouched. The excavator never even lowered its bucket. I paid the property taxes on time, planted the wildflower meadow Grandpa always wanted along the creek, and watched the elk bed down in the north pasture every evening like nothing had happened.
Sometimes, late at night, I'd scroll the hashtag Ranch Revenge tag just to remind myself it was real. The top comment on the viral clip, pinned forever, read, "Plot twist, the land was never theirs to lose. The land chose who it belonged to a long time ago." 28 million people liked that comment. I liked it too. September 2024. 6 months to the day since the handcuffs clicked in my living room. The ranch looked different now, but only if you knew how to look. The north pasture had gone gold with bunch grass. The creek ran clearer after I pulled out the old cattle crossing and seeded native sedges. The elk came back in bigger herds, bedded down every evening like they'd been invited. And the old horse barn, the one Rick once called a teardown, now wore fresh cedar shingles, skylights, and a hand-painted sign that read O'Connor Land Studio. I turned the hayloft into an office, the stalls into drafting tables. My first big contract came from the High Desert Museum. Restore the 1930s pioneer homestead gardens using only plants that would have grown here when Paddy was a boy. They gave me 18 months and a budget that made my accountant cry happy tears. I hired 2 assistants, both girls from the Warm Springs Reservation who knew more about sagebrush than any textbook ever could. Life, for the first time, felt like forward motion instead of damage control. That afternoon, I was on my knees in the new cutting garden, sleeves rolled high, dirt under every fingernail, planting the last flat of Iceland poppies when I heard the familiar crunch of Brennan's 1978 Bronco coming up the drive. He stepped out in his usual uniform, faded Carhartt jacket, Vietnam vet cap, and the same slow grin he'd worn the day he watched my father get loaded into a cruiser. "Got something for you, kiddo," he said, holding up a small brass key on a rawhide cord. Paddy's instructions were crystal. Give it to Harper when the dust settles and she's smiling again. Looks like today's the day. He led me across the yard to Grandpa's workshop, the one place I'd avoided since the funeral because it still smelled like pipe tobacco, linseed oil, and him. The padlock on the old green cabinet in the back was the original 1952 Yale. The key slid in like it had been waiting. Inside was no cash, no gold coins, no secret stock certificates. Just a single cedar box lined in faded red felt. On top laid a letter in Paddy's careful, slanted hand. "My dearest Harper, if you're reading this, I'm gone, and, knowing our family, somebody tried to take what we swore to protect. I hope you gave 'em hell, darlin'. I hope you stood on that porch in my coat and watched the law do what it's supposed to do. Now here's the part I never got around to." He'd drawn 47 garden plans by hand on butcher paper, graph paper, the backs of seed catalogs, anything he could find during the long nights when cancer kept him awake. Each page was dated, titled, and annotated in his spidery pencil. Harper's Moon Garden, white blooms only, night-scented for evenings on the porch. Medicinal border for the Confederated Tribes Youth Program, the plants my mother used in Galway. Pollinator highway along the creek, 400 feet of continuous bloom, April to October. Sunken fire pit garden with stone benches, for the grandchildren I'll never meet. Rose walk to the family cemetery, one bush for every O'Connor who worked the sturt. The margins full of notes, soil amendments, bloom times, sketches of arches made from old branding irons welded together. One entire roll of butcher paper was a complete water harvesting plan that would have made permaculture professors weep. At the very bottom, a single sentence in thicker ink, underlined 3 times. "Land doesn't belong to us, Harper. We belong to the land. Make it sing." I sat down hard on the dusty floor, papers spread around me like flower petals. Brennan quietly closed the workshop door to give me the moment. And then I cried. Not the choking, furious tears of the funeral, not the exhausted, fever tears on the sofa while they screamed at me to leave. These were different, clean, almost grateful. They rolled down my cheeks and dripped onto the cedar floorboards Paddy had planed by hand in 1949,
And for the first time in 7 months, I felt him, really felt him, standing behind me with his big, calloused hand on my shoulder, saying, "Good girl." I cried until the sun dropped behind the cascades and the workshop filled with long lavender shadows, until the poppies outside closed their faces for the night, until I could breathe again without my chest hurting. When I finally stepped back into the evening air, Brennan was leaning against the Bronco, pretending to study the horizon so I could pull myself together. 47 gardens, I said, voice hoarse but steady. He left me 47 gardens. Brennan smiled, soft. Reckon he figured one lifetime wasn't enough to finish the song. Looks like he passed the baton. I looked out over the ranch, the meadows glowing, the mountains turning rose and indigo, the elk already moving down from the timber. Somewhere in the distance, a meadowlark gave its liquid descending call, the same one that had sung Paddy home. I wiped my face with the sleeve of his old coat I still wore when the wind came up. "I'll make it sing, Grandpa," I whispered to the sky. "Every note, I promise." And for the first time since the day they kicked in my door, I smiled, wide, real, and unafraid, because the land had chosen its caretaker, and I had finally, fully accepted the job.